Hello, beautiful people. Let's address the elephant in the room right away. Where the heck have I been for the past 3 months? My last episode published September 27th, and then I just dropped off the face of the earth for the next few months. Well, we're going to talk about that. I was thrown a pretty big curveball this past semester. Remember, I work in education, so that's how I think of the year. But these past few months from September to now, got some big news, but also some great things happening too, and just overall busyness. But this episode will be a little more informal. I really don't have an outline or anything to follow. I'm just going to be talking to y'all about what's been going on. And the first thing that comes to mind, I do have a few points written down here, but I went to Mexico in October. So promptly after the last episode was released, I went on a business trip with a coworker, and we were up there in Mexico City to recruit for our graduate business programs at the university. So it was a great experience, and actually I was surprised because she had mentioned going on this trip a few months prior, but I was actually in Mexico earlier this year with my sister for her business trip. Her company does trips every now and then, and we got to go to Cabo. And so I didn't think I'd be going to Mexico twice in the same year, free of charge, but here we are. So we got to go to Mexico City. That was my first time in that city, and it was beautiful. The people were so warm and friendly. The food was absolutely the best part. It was amazing. Everything was perfectly seasoned. It was rich. It was satisfying. It was definitely had a lot of comfort food there, and just really hearty Mexican, authentic Mexican food, and it was great. Even the breakfast at the hotel was just phenomenal. But so we got to be there for a few days. The weather was nice as well. It was probably in the 50s and 60s the whole time, and so we were just loving that. And we were in a nice part of town too, so we got to go out and see people rollerblading and running and walking their dogs and doing all types of stuff outdoors. It was just good. Okay, so that was around maybe early mid October. My birthday is also in October, and so that came up later, the 19th. And so we celebrated. My family put together a little gathering for me with some friends and just other family in the area. And that was awesome. Celebrated turning 27 and just reflect on everything that God has done over these past 2 decades of my life, of my existence. So that was great. October was very busy, and as you're hearing by now, probably not really a whole lot of room for planning out content. Well, this is where we get to the curveball. So 8 days after my 27th birthday, so this was by now October 27th, I was just on the way to work. My sister and I were carpooling, so I dropped her off, and then on the way to my office, I get a call from my mom. And so I answered it. I was still on the freeway, and the first thing she asked was, "Is your sister in the car with you?" And I said, "Well, no, I just dropped her off. What's going on?" And then she kind of paused for a second and then sighed, and she sounded almost frantic, I would say. And then she just told me, "Okay, that's fine. Just call me when you get to your office." And then we ended the call, and, I was like, okay, that was weird. Like, I couldn't think of anything or any reason why she'd be calling like that with that tone. So I got to my office as quickly as I could. Went inside. I was the first one there. I usually am. Like, I get to my office pretty early in the morning, and so no one else was in my hallway. Went in, closed the door, and then I called her back. And she said, "Yeah, you're in your office now? You're by yourself?" I'm like, "Yes." I was really anxious to know what was going on. Then she told me, "I got a text from your aunt this morning. Your dad passed away in his sleep." And the only thing I could say after I got that news was, "Oh." I just said, "Oh," and then just the dam broke. Just the tears came. I was sobbing. I hadn't cried like that, and I don't know how long. I don't know the last time that I just broke down like that. I was shocked. I was confused. I was feeling. I was sorry because the last time I'd spoken to my dad was earlier in the year, probably around Father's Day. And so about 4 months prior, and the realization of all of that, and just the fact that he's gone, and that it was just so unexpected, but it was a long time coming at the same time. It all just hit at that moment. And those of you who have been following the podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about my dad and our situation, and family. Parents divorced several years ago, and my dad has been battling with health issues in that time. So what I was told was that he had contracted pneumonia over the past few weeks, leading up to his passing. And, that was on top of everything else that was going on, other complications, other things that the nurses had been trying to tend to. And so his body at that point was just too weak to continue fighting off anything. And so, I was on the one hand thankful to know that he passed in his sleep. So it was peaceful. And he didn't pass away writhing in pain or anything like that. So I was very thankful for that. But just the suddenness of it, and I mentioned that it was sudden, but it also was a long time coming. My dad had been struggling with diabetes and complications from it for well over a decade. I can remember even before I was a teenager when he was first diagnosed, and it was in the early stages where all he had to do was, the doctors would just tell him, if you just change your diet and be active, you can totally eliminate this. We remember that. Our whole family was with him, to get those diagnoses and those recommendations. And so we watched our dad go from those stages where it was manageable to progressing to, where he needed serious medical help. And that's really what has made the grieving process, for me, pretty complicated, because I can reflect on all the times where we watched it progress from where it was to where it ended up ultimately. And that was hard. It was very difficult to walk through that, individually and as a family. We wanted so bad for our dad to just overcome it, to conquer it, to not give in to the disease and to watch it worsen. But that's ultimately what happened. And, through different emotions of being angry with him, to being sorry for him, to being sad and compassionate and just wanting him to know that we loved him, it's just been a seemingly never-ending roller coaster of emotions that we've wrestled with as a family. And, on top of getting the news of his passing that morning, my mom also added that he wanted to be cremated and that there was not going to be a funeral. So, add on to everything else, there really was no closure. There really hasn't been any closure, officially. So that just made it really interesting, to wrestle with. And we hadn't seen our dad in just over 6 years. So 2017 was the year that they got divorced, and then we went to see him that summer, at the end of the summer, and then we, didn't know that was going to be the last time that we saw him, but it was. We kept up with my dad through calls, through, FaceTime. We kept him up to date with what was happening in our lives, the big picture events, and even some details too. But I remember over the kind of a few years after after my parents' divorce, his memory started to slip a little bit. It never got to the point where he didn't remember who we are, his daughters and everyone, but there were, eventually with our calls, we had to stop giving him, so much information, like too many details, because, we didn't want to overwhelm him. So we stuck to big picture things, life events, big happenings. And after a time too, we were able to, the call started out with, it was like both people were it wasn't a one-sided conversation. So our dad would respond to us, we would tell him things, we would laugh and all of that. But I remember that slowly over time, he would start talking less. And then it got to a point where he wouldn't speak at all. And we were really confused, like, okay, what's, causing this? Why isn't he talking? Can he not talk? Or is it just hard to talk? And I found out that he, had to be given a feeding tube at some point. And from what I understand, it's either very difficult, if not impossible, to speak with that installed. So for the past maybe 2 years or so, every phone call we did with our dad was just us talking to him. He couldn't talk back, or he would grunt and he would maybe give us affirmation that he was listening, that he heard us. But it was no longer a conversation at that point. We were just calling to fill him in. And so that got to be hard as well. But all of this, my dad was only 59 when he passed. And so that was also pretty devastating as well. He passed 2 weeks before his 60th birthday. And, it just, you never expect anyone to die. Like, it's just kind of, everyone knows that. But when it happens, it's just like, but why? It's like you think you have more time. I don't know, you hear of other people losing family members, other people losing friends and other relatives, and then your heart goes out for them, but then when it happens to you, it's just different. It's like, oh, now I get it. It's like you really can't understand until you've experienced it for yourself. So, that was the curveball. That was what kind of ground everything to a halt. It was fully my intention to get back recording after I got back from Mexico, after my party was over for my birthday. And then that. So, and everything that just comes with losing a family member, now you start going through all these firsts and these experiences that, you're not going to have with them. And growing up, or when we were kids, I remember my dad, talking to us about what kind of man we should be, waiting for, and what it means to join your life with somebody, and talking about us, and eventually getting to our 20s and getting to live out our selfish period, or our time where we're discovering who we are and what we like. And I'm just now 27, and so for most of my 20s, I didn't really get to share that time with him in person. And so now that he's not here anymore, it's just kind of like, wow, that just came out of nowhere. but yeah, so that's, wanted to share that with you guys. I've gotten a lot of support from family, from coworkers, from people just reaching out and, sharing their condolences, telling me that they are here to help with whatever is needed. And it's been great. I've had my sister here to help as well with the grieving process, and my parents, like my mom and my, bonus dad, who has now been upgraded to full-time dad. But, yeah, it's been interesting, a few months, but, God has been faithful. He's close to the brokenhearted, is what the scripture says, Psalm 34:18, and he rescues those who are crushed in spirit. So if you're listening to this right now, and maybe you have also dealt with a loss this year, or maybe the past few weeks or past few months, just be encouraged, especially if your loved one or your relative was a believer. There is hope that we will get to see them again. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And from what I observed of my dad and his life and the way he loved us, and I know he professed Christ and he was a believer. So I'm hopeful that all of our prayers for him while he was still alive, and the calls that we made to him, those were not in vain. And I just trust God with his timing. It's pretty jarring, the fact that it happened at all, but again, it's just an opportunity for me to trust God with this. So that was the main thing. I mean, a couple other big things as well. I just applied to a PhD program to study organizational behavior in the fall of 2024. So haven't heard anything. The deadline was in December. So I'm sure I'll hear from them in the coming weeks, months. I think by April is when everyone is supposed to have their decision on the program. So I'm very much looking forward to this, but y'all pray for me, because I really am hoping and praying for this opportunity. And it's all in God's hands. I've applied. I've done everything that I can do. So I'm just going to wait expectantly, wait patiently. And in the meantime, just enjoy life. I've got one more semester of my master's program, and I'm graduating from that in May. So a lot of cool things happening this coming year. And yes, that PhD app was the most tedious one I've ever completed. And so I'm just hopeful that it'll pay off in some way. But, it's in God's hands. So that's what I've got for you guys. Those are the updates. This episode, as I mentioned before, will be coming out, or maybe I think I mentioned it, but if I did, here it is again. This one, if you're listening to it the day of, it's January 3rd, and then from here I'll be posting every couple of weeks, every other Wednesday, just like I have been doing. And I'm on TikTok now, so I finally caved in and made a TikTok. So you can find me there along with Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And I'll be posting goals to be, do a couple of posts a week on TikTok, and then, just really crafting out a game plan for posting more frequently. But at least you can count on the audio and the video episodes to be out every other Wednesday, so every 2 weeks. As always, send me episode suggestions and ideas. Share, please, please, please share these episodes with your circle, with your family, with your friends, anybody that you know would benefit from this. And if you're enjoying the show, then I know that there's other people in your life who would enjoy it as well. Leave positive reviews as well on Apple and Spotify, wherever you're listening. And just, again, word of mouth. That's a great way to get these podcasts out there. But I thank you guys for your support, and I look forward to being back in the regular rhythm of releasing, publishing, producing episodes. But thank y'all so much. Take care, and Happy New Year. Peace.